Hi all. Well, I've been bitten by the overly elaborate bag charm thing that's been going around. I saw a couple other posts and then I saw this post. I was never into Calico Critters. I might have had some in the past, lost those in the move, but then I saw that picture and I'm like, ooh. So I ordered the bag. Well, I looked at Temu for a long time, but then I eventually got it from Amazon. And then I found these locally at the Barnes & Noble. They're pretty much the same price everywhere. Are they 25 or 30? Which was too much. But the goal was I wanted to recreate that bag. And then I was thinking, you know, I already make dresses for little tiny things a bunch of years ago, so I might as well make one for this group. Or at least the big one, maybe the little one in the future. And welcome to my giant ball of size 10 thread crochet cotton. Really, it mystifies me that people make whole blankets out of this stuff. It's painful. But this is a chart I made bunches of years ago for all my different crochet hooks, the brands, the sizes that's on the crochet hook, and what's best. So I think I normally use either a 6 or a 7 buoy on this, but I wanted to use clover since clover's nicer to your hand. So when you look at the chart, the size, let's see, 10 should be a size 2 clover. And that nasty one in my hand is just the size 7 that I normally use. So I did make a top in this size and I realized it's just too chunky. So I end up switching to a size 4 clover hook and then a size 20 crochet cotton. You might want to pause here so you can take a screenshot of the pattern using the size 10 thread. So I cast on 31 and then the first row is half double crochets. And keeping in mind I'm American, so it's American phrases for my crochet. So the creation of the armholes, the idea of it has been kicking around, I think, since long before I was alive. People have been doing this for Barbies, other dolls. As long as, you know, you can pretty much construct anything out of crochet, since it's just, I just think it's just so much more versatile to do odd shapes. So the note here is skip 5 stitches, go into the 6th. This pin tells me where to start the next armhole. So I just do half double crochets all the way over. I've seen some people sort of stop here. I mean, their limbs are so little, but I like to tighten it up. So I do one more row. So for this row, it's half double crochets for parts that are on the body. And then I do, it's usually called 2 stitches in a 1, where on the body it's going to be a half double, but I'm also bringing in one of the stitches that would be a part of the, strap. Now for the strap, I do what I call slip stitches, but I've just looked up online and they usually call it a half single crochet, where you just bring in the loop and then keep continuing. So I'm not necessarily consistent with how to join to the body, though, that sort of condensing of the 2 stitches, because it looked like I just did a slip stitch to go onto the body. But again, this is really trying to figure out the pattern for it, and then I sort of perfect it as I go. So this is really, the prototype. See, I like how nice and neat the front looks. Yeah, the back's wonky, but that takes some, the next version that'll get corrected. Usually do a little bit of overlap, but not too much, because this stuff's gonna stretch. And I find I like them either to just barely overlap or just to meet in the middle, because I'm still going to be crocheting in a buttonhole. So making the buttonhole, I'm trying to square up the edge, so I'll probably do a chain and then maybe 2 stitches, And then I think I do at least 6, depending on the size of the button, 6 chain, and then join back, and then as you can see, I join it right back to the very beginning. And usually I double knot it, and then I thread the loose ends through. That's going to get hidden within the body. And I failed to sort of write it down in my notes, but that's just the way I always end one of those tops. So here's the pattern. You might want to pause and screenshot this. So now we got to figure out the skirt. So for the skirt, I'm going to be using a scrap of Liberty cotton lawn, which is nice and thin. Could be a little stiff for the project. I like to use antique wool or any kind of wool, which can be a cotton blend. Sometimes it's cotton silk. Sometimes it's just really fine cotton. And I use my ugly pieces for experiments. But Liberty cotton is really good for doll projects because it's really fine. So this is a dry iron because it's just so thin. This piece is about a little over 3 inches by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It should be long enough. But I usually measure that, the waist, and then times it by 3, and that tells you how much you need, at least lengthwise. So I'm just going to cut this in half and sew it together. So I'm not going to sew these on a machine. None of this stuff gets sewn on a machine, really. And I don't even think, so when I do this for something I'm going to sell, I would do fray check on all the edges. Well, first I'd do a little, what do you call it? I do a tiny hem on the bottom. What's nice about antique fabric is a lot of times it's already something else. So it already has a hem and a really nice hem. But if you can do a rolled hem on the end of this, that would work. And then I would fray check on the top and on the sides. And then maybe do the rolled hem on this permanent side. So here's how. So there's the buttonhole. Button's going to be on that side. And you're pretty much sewing through the little holes given to you by the crochet. And I'm going to do centimeters because it's easier. They're just smaller increments. So that's about 8. So your goal will be about 24, depending. If I sew it up and 24 feels too much, then I'll make it smaller. And since this is 12, it's probably the perfect when I sew them all together. And any fine thread. I mean, this is normal Goodman polyester. There we go. I have sharps 10s and 12s. Good to use the larger of the two. So sharps are quilting needles. They're very short, they're very sharp, and they're very tiny. So try to use as small as you can, but if you can't see it or physically feel it, go for a bigger needle. The smaller the needle, the easier it is to pass through the thread. The smaller the needle, the easier it is to pass through the fabric. Even the size 12 is fighting to go through the Liberty, but I just might need a new needle. Don't give yourself too much. As you can see, I'm gonna have to trim that. So the next part, yes, it's sped up, but it's not fast enough. And it's kind of painful to watch me struggle trying to get this started because there's too much tension in my thread. I think I really did need a new needle for this. I ended up jabbing myself a few times. But once I get this started, it's okay, but it is a struggle. But don't worry, once I get past the first tiny part, then I just skip over to the end. So just bear with me. Yeah, it doesn't look great, but you can use the heat in your fingers to flatten it out. And it does look really nice once it's all done. Okay, so this is arduous. So we're gonna, I'd hit it with fray check, but I can't find it. So I'm gonna use some high flow medium, which is watered down acrylic. Which is quite messy. So while that's drying, welcome to my buttons. They came from various craft stores. The smaller ones are from an Etsy seller a long time ago when Etsy was great, from a person in Thailand. She made really great buttons. I don't know if she's still there, but she's well worth it. Well worth it. Here's an example of my Laddie yellow dress. When I got this piece of antique lace, oh, so inspiring. Obviously haven't finished it. You can pretty much wing it with button placement. So the goal really is to find a stitch that you can sew it onto that's stable, and there's still enough room for your little loop to catch enough of the button so that it doesn't pop open. I mean, how much movement is your doll gonna do, you know? So it's not really an issue, but, you know, try to be careful. And I really just do one pass to get the button on, and then I do another pass just in case something happens, and then I do essentially a surgeon's knot at the top. It makes it so that it's a knot that'll never untie. And then you can trim the loose ends really tight without it failing. I can't say this is the fiddliest part of the project because this whole project is fiddly, but this was the most exasperating because I had to sort of remember it'd been years since I did one, so I have taken it apart probably twice at this point. Sometimes it'd be too short, sometimes just too bulky, so I figure out in the end, it's just two little catches, like two little pleats, and then you sew backwards. So here you see me doing 3, and I did that for a while, and then I pulled it apart again. So I'll catch up with you when I'm down to, it's 2 pleats per, and you're essentially doing a back stitch because you want to anchor those stitches in. But yeah, it's pretty fiddly. You may have to try a couple different ways of getting it on there, but eventually I do remember how to do it properly. So here's where I have redone it twice. I figure out I can handle 1 gather with this material, just 1. But look how nice and neat it is. Just a nice even pleat all the way down. I also folded the very beginning maybe twice, just so that I could have a nice even place to sort of fold down if I decide to sew a seam, not a seam, but a hem for that side piece. So when you're all done, hopefully the fabric isn't too sort of poofy. That's why I like something a little softer, but it's hard to find doll size. But your goal is when you sew it down, it doesn't get seen from the outside. So make sure to give yourself enough of a margin to get that in there. And also to sew tight enough so that every pleat you do is nice and flat, because the goal is you don't want to give it away, because that's the one thing I don't like about doll dresses that are joined to tops. People always have this bulge at the waist, and if you do it right, you don't get that bulge. Be it make the top thicker so it can have enough room to sort of make it look natural, because you don't see that in people. You might see that in children's clothes where it looks so awkward, but the goal is to be convincing with this too. Thankfully, we reached the end, but as you can tell, I kind of ran out of material, but that's okay. We still have a tail gap that it needs to be in this particular dress, and for other dolls there would be an overlap within the fabric, so it wouldn't matter.
Might have to iron this down. Yeah, I gotta iron this down. It's a little crazy. There you go. If you make enough of these, they're simple enough. I used to make a bazillion of them. Let's get a close up on that. Very cute. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little video. Little bit of crocheting, a little bit of sewing, no machine used. And I hope you found it informative. So thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye.